The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good morning, Florida. Welcome to another Ask the Expert show where we bring you the top experts in the field of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. So we do about 50 shows a week. Believe it or not, we do a lot of shows. And there's some shows that are like, I would say, more my favorites. Our expert who's with us twice a month, it's become so important to this show because he gives such great advice that we have opened this show up for all of Florida. And we hope that you will appreciate the show as well as the information. Our expert from Provise Management Group, Ray Ferrara. Good morning, Ray.
Good morning, Steve, and happy first of the last half of the year.
This year is going by so fast, Ray.
Well, Steve, as you and I can attest, somehow it seems to go faster the older we get.
It does, doesn't it?
I don't know where the last 6 months went, but it disappeared quickly.
Well, Ray, I got to tell you, you've really become our guru. The next morning, I haven't even told you this yet. The next morning after the debate, I got so many emails wanting to know what's going to happen now after that debate to the economy. So you're like E.F. Hutton. You're like E.F. Hutton, right?
I'm glad you just showed our age. People don't know who E.F. Hutton was.
Yeah, I know. But they had a great commercial, though. You know,
they did. The tagline,
Hutton, and everybody turned around.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great. I'm glad you asked me about it relative to the economy, because I certainly don't want to talk about the politics of it in any depth. Although the two are inextricably tied together. First of all, regardless of what side that you're on, it was sad to see the president's performance that night.
I agree. I totally agree.
It was unfortunate. And of course, there's been a lot of talk since then, and especially over the weekend with the talk shows about, what's going to happen. You just simply don't want to see any person in that kind of a position. And then on the other side, although Trump did not stumble and fumble in the same way that the president did, he could have really put a nail in the coffin if he had just stuck to the facts without embellishing important points. But as it relates to the economy, the biggest piece that they talked about the other night, other than trading barbs, really has to do with tax policy. And as a result of the fact that President Trump's tax act from December of 2017 will sunset in 18 months. There's a lot of wondering exactly what will happen. And these elections are definitely going to make a difference, not only for the president of the United States, but for all of those that in both the Senate and the House that will be running for election or re-election, as the case may be. It is safe to say that should the Democrats sweep the White House and Congress, that taxes will be going up, especially for those that make over $400,000 in a variety of different ways. Conversely, if former President Trump was elected to the White House and then he had a Republican Congress, we would continue to see the tax cuts, some would call them a reform, extended in many ways. And a little bit later, we'll talk in more depth about spending and tax revenue, et cetera. But simply said that generally, excuse me, higher taxes are a drag on the economy. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to drag the economy down. It just means it'll slow it down at a minimum. And lower taxes generally increase economic activity. Why? Because people have more money to spend. But it's not necessarily dramatic on either side of the equation. But clearly, I think we have seen over the past 6 years, people have had more money to spend, not only because of all of the pandemic-related money, but because their taxes have generally been lower. So that's, I think, the big economic takeaway from the debate. Sure, there's the arguments about oil. The president clearly would prefer to have alternative sources of energy. Former President Trump would be much more excited about expanding the oil industry, and so that would make a big difference to the economy, particularly as we go through this transition from an oil-based economy to one that might be on an alternative basis and renewable and sustainable. But that's years and years away. So those are my two big economic takeaways from the debate.
Ray, there's 5 months left to the elections. Can you tell by the market who the market thinks is going to be the next president?
Steve, there's actually ways that in the market that you can make an investment in the returns. I don't want to call it betting, although it probably is, but there are odds that are out there. Again, coming off of the debate, there are 75% of the population that think both gentlemen are too old. But yes. Particularly that's true of President Biden. There is still, even after the performance, there are 35% of the Democratic base that will vote for Biden no matter what, just as there's about 35% that are going to vote for Trump no matter what. And it's that 30% in between that is going to make the difference. Those are the independents that are out there. Those are the Hispanic votes that are out there. The people of color votes that are out there. All of them that are basically undecided. And so right now, if the election were held today, and particularly coming off of the debate, I think the odds are that former President Trump would win the election. But as you said, there's 5 months to go. A lot could happen. Yes. This morning on CNBC, there was even comments made that maybe President Biden can't even finish out his term. I think that's a bit extreme. That would be very unfortunate for the country and not good for us economically to have the president resigning at this point. I do think there's at least a 60-40, let me say it the other way, a 40% chance that the president will withdraw before the Democratic convention. He's trying to hold his own. But if the votes, if it was voting today coming off of that debate, there's little question in my mind that former President Trump would win the election. But one thing I have learned watching lots of elections over my 77 years is funny things happen during elections. And until they actually go to the polls and vote, you just don't know what's going to happen. We'll be
a lot of October surprises, aren't there? There's a lot of October surprises.
There sure are. But, from an economic standpoint, Steve, we've talked about this before. It doesn't, in the long run, it doesn't make any difference who's in the White House or in Congress. Our economy has grown under both Democratic rule, Republican rule, split rule. Our economy is bigger than all of the politicians combined. And while presidents get beaten up for a bad economy and don't receive an equal amount of credit for a good economy, the fact is the economy is big enough that it's able to overcome bad policy and it's able to thrive in good policy. And I'm not saying what's bad or good. I'm just saying it's been able to survive through both.
Wow. Well, today, Ray, a lot of things are supposed to be decided upon by the Supreme Court. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of things that are going to come out today. What are your thoughts regarding the Chevron rule and the potential for a wealth tax?
So, Steve, before I answer that part, obviously the biggest thing that we'll be looking for, and it should be out very shortly, is a decision by the Supreme Court about whether a sitting president can be held exempt from certain rules. And this is going to be a very interesting dynamic. There's no way in my mind that there'll be a unanimous decision on that. It's going to be split, and that will just make things even worse. But let me talk about the Chevron case and one other case that has a lot to do with the economy. The Chevron rule, if you will, goes back to the mid 80s and has been used consistently by regulatory agencies to essentially fill in the blanks between legislation that was passed by Congress and the rules and regulations, the policy that came out of that. In other words, can the Food and Drug Administration make rules and regulations that go beyond the legislation? And essentially, the Chevron case said yes, they can. That rule, that situation was reversed by the Supreme Court last week when it responded to a lawsuit brought by a group of fishermen up in the Northeast who had sued because the government wanted to charge them to hire monitors to make sure that they were following proper procedure. And essentially, the Supreme Court overruled the Chevron rule from back in the mid 80s that was done by the Supreme Court, which means that it's going to limit agencies' abilities to formulate and then promulgate regulatory rules that are not specifically authorized by legislation. Those in industry are going to are ecstatic about this reversal. It should lead to businesses having to spend less money for overburdensome rules and regulations. It will encourage businesses to sue the government more often when they do think that something is being done unfairly. And therefore, it's going to reduce the costs for businesses to operate. And that will should increase profits, which should increase stock prices as a result. Now, it's not going to be something that happens overnight. It's going to take time, but over time, it's going to have a dramatic impact on how companies are regulated by the government. The other ruling that the Supreme Court made that is very scary indeed is there was a husband and wife that made an investment in India in a company, and that company never paid them a dime. They never charged anything to the company. They never had any income in any shape or form. And yet the IRS in 2016 decided that income that was made by the company would be imputed on the tax return of this couple. And they fought that because income can be taxed, but they had never received any money from it. And in a very surprise ruling, the government agreed, the Supreme Court agreed with the IRS and with the government that this money could be and should be taxed. And the reason that's scary, Steve, is simply that sort of opens the door to the wealth tax that President Biden has talked about, where we're going to have an income tax, but where there would be a wealth tax. And that is that you would have to pay money based on the wealth that you have, not just on the income that you receive. And candidly, I hope it would never pass Congress to create a wealth tax. But I fear that if there is a fully Democratic House, Senate, and White House, there is a real opportunity for that to happen. Even then, it's not guaranteed, but the odds of it certainly increase. And that to me is fundamentally wrong. I don't understand how you tax wealth in that way on an annual basis. A very cumbersome approach in my mind, a very expensive approach, and one that will lead to lots of arguments because like with the ownership in my company, Provise Management Group, who determines what it's really worth? Right. And how do you haggle over it? And while we mention the company, Steve, let me just take this opportunity to remind our listeners that they are always encouraged to give us a call at 727-441-9022. That's 727-441-9022. We offer a 1-hour free consultation in our Clearwater or Tampa offices, or by Zoom or Teams. And we hope that people will take advantage of it. Let's get to know each other, ask us some of the questions that we get from some of our listeners specific to their situation. And if we can't help, maybe we can refer you to someone who can. So take advantage of that 1-hour complimentary consultation by simply calling our offices at 727-441-9022 or write me info at provise.com and learn more about us by going to our website, provise.com.
Ray, we just got a text in. Oh, this is an interesting one. This is from Harvey in Tampa. What a great show. I just found your show in iHeart's library, which is wonderful. People don't realize that all your past shows are all in iHeart's library under Ask the Experts, wealth management and money management. He wants to know, President Trump said that he was going to not tax waiters and waitresses on their tips. Can he really do that? And if so, how does he do that?
So can he do it? The answer is no. Can he go to Congress and ask Congress to pass a law that said waiters and waitresses tips would not count as income. But I would be shocked to see that kind of legislation come out of Congress today, as divided as it is,
Right.
regardless of who's in control. And frankly, it would be extremely unfair, in my mind, to not tax that income, where others who are perhaps working on minimum wage, maybe not a whole lot more than somebody would make in a restaurant as a waiter or a waitress, yet they would have to pay taxes. So I think it would, even if it passed, I think that it would get challenged. I would certainly not endorse it from an economic standpoint. I think whenever you start to set out exceptions or a certain class of people, and where you make the playing field unlevel, it causes all kinds of economic issues. And I like things on a level playing field where I can see things and I know for the most part, know how to anticipate and to deal with the plays that need to be made. But when you favor one group of people over another, unfortunately, that leads to that unlevel playing field.
Yeah, we saw what it did with forgiving these school loans, how it really divided people up who had already paid off their loans.
Well, not only those that paid off their loans and did the honorable thing, but some of those that got their loans paid off got 100% done. Others only got a part of it done. And then some of them haven't qualified at all. And, what's the fairness? What's the fairness in all of that? And don't get me started. I think when you borrow money, you have a responsibility to pay it back. And if you can't pay it back, then that's what we have a bankruptcy court for, not the government, forgiving debt and adding to our national debt as a result of it. It means all of us are paying off that loan.
Ray, we got a couple minutes left. Tell people why they should retain your company.
Well, Steve, at the risk of pounding my chest, which I guess I'm going
That's
to.
That's okay. You can do
that. There's a couple of different reasons. The first reason is virtually all of our advisors are certified financial planners. That means that they subscribe to a code of ethics. That means we must work at a fiduciary standard of care when providing financial advice. That means as fiduciaries, we have to put every client's and prospective client's interests ahead of our own. And that's a huge difference. On top of that, we've all passed a rigorous exam to receive the CFP designation, and we're required to do 30 hours of continuing education every 2 years to stay proficient. So that's a great start. Number two, since we are certified financial planners, it makes sense to do financial planning. And we do planning. Many people are just out there trying to gather assets, to manage the assets. But unless you understand everything about a client, the holistic nature of what they're trying to do or not do, you can't invest the money as intelligently as you can when you understand the goals, the dreams, the aspirations of your client. And that starts with a written financial plan. And sometimes it's a one-pager with bullet points on it. Other times it can be a very thick document. And we, nothing at Provise is a cookie cutter. Everything is done on an individual basis, including the investment side. Are there similarities amongst all of the folks? The answer is yes. So I'll give those two, and let me give a third one. And the third one is that historically we retain 97% of our clients year in and year out, including those that pass away or move away. In comparison to the rest of the industry, that is extremely high. And if we weren't doing a good job for our 1,200 families and clients that are out there, we'd have a much lower retention level than we do. So CFP designation, financial planning, and apparently our clients are happy with the results we're providing for them.
Absolutely. Greg, give everybody your phone number and your website.
Again, the phone number is 727-441-9022. That's 727-441-9022. And the website is provise.com, PROVISE.com. Go to the website, take a look at us, see what you like. And if you like it, don't forget to take advantage of our 1-hour complimentary consultation.
And Ray will be back with us 2 weeks from today at 9 a.m. Eastern Time with more Ask the Experts. Ray, enjoy your 4th of July week, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
And let's celebrate the 4th of July, the great freedoms that we have from our founding fathers beginning. It is something to celebrate.
We love you, Ray. Thank you so much.
Have a great day and wonderful week.
That's Ray Ferrara, Provise Money Management. Hey, that's it for us today. We have another show coming up right after this. And thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned for our next show, our next expert. Everybody have a wonderful 4th of July weekend. Take care. God bless.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.